Tonight's guest is Lisa. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic, for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate your time. Lisa, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I am 44. I was raised apostolic, Spanish Apostolic Assembly. I am from New Mexico, originally born and raised in Taos. Currently living in northern New Mexico, just a little ways from Taos, south of Taos. I am married. I have 5 children. Yeah, pretty quiet life. Nothing much, nothing exciting except for this.
Well, it might be a quiet life, but it sounds like a really good one you've carved out, so I'm impressed. You said you were raised apostolic. Do you consider yourself to be a religious person, Lisa?
Well, okay, so I was raised apostolic. I went from the Spanish Apostolic Assembly Church to a Pentecostal church. And years later, after I met my husband, we became Messianic. So I guess, yes, I'm religious, though I don't really like to say religious. It's more of a thing where we strictly just really follow the Bible. We're not judgmental. We're not your normal run-of-the-mill religious people, I guess you would say.
If that's the case, what kind of an effect did your encounter have on your faith?
Well, to be honest, I was always taught that anything that we saw pretty much that didn't make sense or out of the ordinary like that wasn't what we know as God's creation, things we're used to seeing, would be considered demonic and spiritual. So it really, at first, did not have an impact on me until years later when I realized what I had seen, and I was more open-minded at that time, I guess.
Touching on what you just said, for the listeners who are convinced dogmen are demons, what would you say to them about that?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest, what they really are. I'm not sure if they are from another dimension. I'm not sure if they are demonic. To be honest, with my experience, I want to say this thing was tangible. It was not a spirit. Oh, that's a tough question, Vic, because, I just still that's up in the air for me still.
Well, that makes 2 of us. I can't answer that question either, so don't feel bad about that. Do you get defensive when people rebuff you when you try to tell them about that experience, or is it water off of a duck's back?
So, I haven't really shared it with too many people. My husband knows. My children know. They haven't told me I was crazy or anything, but we've kind of been through a lot spiritually and with other stuff too that we're not sure, what it is. So they do believe me. I haven't shared it with my other family members because I already know their mentality coming from the background that they are in. I understand their thoughts on stuff like this, and I wouldn't be able to share it with them because I know that I would probably just be chalked up as a nut or, oh, you just saw a demon and, that's all it was.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it?
Yes.
You said you told your kids. Are they having a hard time dealing with the knowledge that dogmen are actually out there?
Not really. My 15-year-old, she kind of is more cautious. I've noticed, now that if we want to go hiking or something, she does mention, oh, well, what if we see one of those? And I'm like, well, we can't live in fear. And she realizes that too, but I think she's a little more cautious just so that she doesn't have that experience. She's just really careful. So no, I can't say that it's really affected them too much.
Oh, good. That's good news then. And it sounds like your 15-year-old daughter is precocious. Is she?
She is. She's a very wise child. She's amazing. She really does have a good head on her shoulders, and she understands the spiritual realm and also other things that we're not so sure about, whether they are spiritual or physical or from another dimension of sorts. We don't know, but we are very aware, especially after the things that we've been through. So, yeah, she's amazing.
Sounds like she is. What about your husband? How has he handled that knowledge?
Well, I don't think that it really bothers him, to be honest. I just think that he knows and he's aware, but he doesn't live his life in fear. He's very adventurous. He loves to be outdoors, especially near water. And I don't think he's going to let anything stop him. He hasn't. I mean, it is what it is, I guess, and you just can't really change the experience, but you can be careful. Obviously, we're careful with our children when we do go out to places, but, at the same time, you do have to let your children be children. So I think he's handling it pretty well.
Well, that's great. That's great news. Your encounter happened while you were on a camping trip. Had you done much camping before you had that experience?
We've been camping sporadically throughout the years. It wasn't something we did every year. But that year, we actually went because there was a family at the synagogue that we were attending at the time who invited us camping. And we didn't know Albuquerque area too well at that time. So they chose the place, which was Cochiti Lake. And I had never been there. Even though I am from New Mexico, I had never been. So, no, we hadn't really been camping too often.
Did that experience put the kibosh on your interest in doing any more camping, or did you go on more trips after that?
Yeah, we have gone out. We've been camping since then, maybe 2 or 3 times. I haven't really had any drawbacks from it. I try not to let those things eat at my mind. Really just try to live a normal life without too much worry and concern. Obviously, yes, we're cautious. I mean, we don't carry really, we should, but we don't carry guns. I just don't have a thing for guns because my children are small and they kind of scare me to have them around with them. I hear so many horror stories, so we don't have guns. But we do take knives with us and stuff like that. And of course we pray. So that is one thing that we still believe in, is that we have the protection of God.
Well, guns aren't all that effective against dogmen normally, so you not taking any with you is not that big of a deal. Before we move on, if you've had a dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, either way is fine, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Also, you should know I've got a new Bigfoot show I'm producing. It's called My Bigfoot Sighting, and I put a link for it in the description for tonight's show. You really should check it out. If you listen, you'll see that it's a different kind of Bigfoot show, and I think you'll like it. Alright, now that I've shared that with you, let's get back to the show. Alright, Lisa, please tell us about your encounters now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
I believe this was back in 2012. I had my first 3 children. My daughter was probably about 13 or 14, somewhere in there. My son was probably around 8 or 9. And my youngest was about 4 and a half, somewhere in there. And we had some friends, and they asked us if we wanted to go camping. They had a very large family. At that time, they had 7 girls, but 6 of them were with them. And we said, sure. And I remember being really excited. We got everything together, all the stuff that you need to go camping, the food, the coolers, all the stuff, everything that you need, clothes, extra clothes for the kids, towels, blankets, the tent. And we were really excited. We packed it all in our van and we followed them up to Cochiti Lake. And I do remember, Vic, on the drive going up there, thinking it was kind of eerie. I do remember thinking that. And I didn't really let it eat at me. I just thought, well, it is the desert. This is New Mexico. So I just kind of left that thought to the back of my mind. And when we got up there, we chose a spot. The men set up the tents, and us ladies, we set up the tables so that we could eat. Everybody ate. We had a good time. The kids got into the lake with our husbands, and they had a wonderful time there. And while we were there, the water was very, very cold. This was around, I think it was in September, probably mid-September or so. And I remember my daughter screaming and like swimming up to the front. And I was like, what's wrong with her? And she said she had felt something in the water that had brushed against her leg. And I thought, well, you know what? It's probably just a fish. And she said, but I saw something. She said she turned around and looked behind her a ways. And she said she saw what she thought was a shark fin. And I was like, yeah, there's no sharks in the lake. So I just left it at that. Didn't really think anything of it. Well, then everybody got out and they were freezing. And so we got the kids warmed up, dressed, and some hot chocolate. And we sat down and around the campfire and just kind of had a good old time, our two families. And sun was going down, so we all retired to our own tents. And my husband said, it would be nice to look at the stars, so let's just leave the covering off the top of the tent. So we did that. And we were just laying there looking at the stars. It was a beautiful evening, clear. And I don't know how long we were there before we started hearing drumming and chanting. And I was like, what in the world is that? And there was kind of a hill off to the right of our tent where it kind of sloped up. And it didn't even dawn on me that we were actually on Indian territory near the Cochiti Pueblo. And we just really were like, oh my gosh, what is that? And he says, it just sounds like, Native Americans, my husband said. And so being that we believed that, what they were doing was probably evil. We didn't know what they were chanting. We didn't know what was going on. We started to pray against this. And I don't know how long it went on. We finally ended up, everybody went to sleep. And it was probably around 2:00 in the morning, I want to say, somewhere in there. I know it was a full moon that night. So it was pretty lit up. It was not too dark. Everybody, before they went to sleep, had went to the restroom. So nobody got up. Everybody had left their shoes outside of the tent on the little pull down area for the tent where you put your shoes on. That's where everybody's shoes were, including mine. Well, about 2:00 in the morning, I became aware. I'm a light sleeper because I have children. I tend to be able to listen for them. And so being the light sleeper that I am, I woke up because I became aware that something was looking at me. And our tent was large. It was an 8-person tent. And there was 5 of us in there. And so this thing was pretty tall. It wasn't a short tent. Tents are pretty tall anyways. This one my husband could stand up in pretty much. And he's 6 feet tall. And so anyways, upon being awoken, because I felt like something was looking at me, I opened my eyes and I'm looking straight up at the dome. And there is this thing staring at me. And it communicated with my mind. And it wasn't with a voice or anything. It was through my mind. And what it said to me was it was going to get my children. And I told it back with my mind, oh, no, you're not. And I don't know what in the world came over me. But this thing really just, I guess, must have rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. And this is what I think is just really was just dumb of me because, You can't outrun something like this. It didn't make sense what I did, other than I think the reason I did it was instinct to try to get it away from my children. So I unzipped the tent and I booked it. I started running as fast as I possibly could. So the way that our tent was set up, the lake was in front of it, a ways from the lake, but it was in front of our tent. There was a like little smooth dirt road in front of our tent that went off to the left and then to the right. So it was like an L shape where you could get out. So I started running for all I was worth. And I get to that L and I make a right and I keep running. And about halfway down that road, I hear my husband yell at me, "Lisa, what are you doing?" And I stopped in my tracks and I turned around and looked at him. And this thing that was behind me also turned around and looked at him, and it dropped on all fours and it took off in the field left of us. Well, I could not understand why my husband was asking me what I was doing. I was like, doesn't he see what's going on? Like, doesn't he see this? Okay, so I went back into the tent, and then I went back to sleep. My husband was just like, he laid down and went to sleep, and I went to sleep. There was like no more questions. It was really odd. And that morning when I woke up, when we all woke up, I remember my husband was irritated because there was dirt all over the inside of the tent. And he's like, all right, who went out, and brought all this dirt in? And everybody was like, I didn't go out, and I was like, that's odd. I didn't even think about it. I thought I was dreaming. And then I remember my daughter, Eloisa, telling me, Mom, look at the bottom of your socks. They're all dirty. And I was like, oh my gosh, they were. I had dirt all over my socks. So I know that seeing that, I should have put two and two together. But I did tell them, I told my family I had this really weird dream last night. I dreamt that this Cochiti doll with the head of a wolf was looking in our tent, and I told them everything that had happened. And they were like, oh, okay, Cochiti doll. And they didn't think anything of it. We left it as that. And on our way home, we really didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was a nightmare of some sort. Years later, when I started listening to your show, Vic, I began to wonder, and I was thinking to myself, you know what, Lisa, that really happened, because this is what you saw. The way that people are describing it, only I was describing it as a Cochiti doll because that's all I knew how to describe it as. Well, in New Mexico, the Native Americans have Cochiti dolls, and some Cochiti dolls will have different heads. Some will have heads of eagles, heads of bulls. This one had the head of a wolf, and I've seen those before too. And that was the only way I could describe it. I didn't know what a Dogman was. I didn't even think that these things existed. I mean, that was just furthest thing from my mind. And when I brought it up again to my family, they were like, and my daughter goes, yeah, Mom, but a Cochiti doll? And I was like, yes. And she goes, but those are really small, like, because they're tiny. Like the biggest one is probably maybe a foot tall, foot and a half. And I said, no, you don't understand. I said, I'm describing to you what it looked like, not the height. This thing was towering over our tent. So it had to be at least 7 feet tall, because the way that the arch of the tent goes, you're going to have to mold your body over that to be looking in. So I'm guessing that was probably about the right height, I would say. So anyhow, she was like, oh, okay. So I just started to listen to your show, and I was thinking, you know what, this sounds an awful lot like what I saw. And years later, I had started to put two and two together already. My husband believed me because, he didn't remember. He said it was really odd to him because it was like if somebody had erased his memory. Like he did not remember anything about it at all. And I'm like, how could you not remember me telling you? I mean, I've told you like 3 different occasions, and he just could not recall. But I thought that was really weird. He said, gosh, it's almost like my memory was wiped or something. And I was thinking, well, I don't know if they can do that, but something is definitely off. So anyhow, this next, and I'm going right into the next one because the last one, the first encounter that I had really did not faze me right away because like I said, I just thought it was a dream. I didn't put any other thought into it. It didn't disturb me. To me, it was just a nightmare. So anyways, years later, which was about a year and a half ago, we moved from Albuquerque to where my mom lives in northern New Mexico. It's this little tiny place that if you blink, you've really missed it. It's very tiny area. Well, anyways, it sits right next to the Rio Grande. It's a beautiful, beautiful country area. And she lives, the way that her land is formed is pie-shaped. And so down towards the south end of her land is an arroyo area. It's dried up. There's no arroyo going through there anymore. It's just really sandy, and a lot of ATVs like to go over there and they like to do their thing. And there's bushes and trees and whatnot, but really nothing more than that. And it's pretty sandy. So there is on her land, coming up from the hill from that arroyo, is an old church that my grandfather used to pastor. And that's vacant right now, and it was vacant at the time. And we were living in a motorhome at that time with our children. And then up from that, beside the motorhome is the garage. It's quite a large area there. And then a little ways from that is her trailer. Well, anyways, one evening I was sleeping in the living room with my children. They were afraid, and so I decided I was going to sleep in there that night, and I slept on the couch. And they were asleep. Gosh, I don't know what time it was. It was probably about midnight, maybe a little after midnight. I don't know. And I'm laying there, and we have the shades that you pull down, and they're white. They're not like mini blinds or anything. They're just like one of those rolling shades that you pull down in the RVs. And my mom has these lights that go on that my brother, motion sensor lights that my brother had put all over really the property. And one of them is fixed on the garage there right by our motorhome where we were. Well, I'm laying there and I see this thing. I didn't know what it was. Go right in front of the window where I'm sleeping. Now keep in mind, motorhomes are tall. So the window, if my husband was standing in front of that window, I wouldn't even see his head because it's pretty tall, the window. So pretty high up. Well, that light went on, and that was why I saw its shadow go. So I know it wasn't a spirit. It was something tangible because it set the motion sensor light off. And I just thought, oh, that's weird. But I didn't really give it any more thought. And then I told my husband about it the next morning. I told him what I had seen. But, we just were like, oh, okay, yeah, well, I don't know. So anyhow, that day, my sister had come over to my mom's. And it was me and my mom, my sister, and my daughter. We were inside my mom's house. And my sister had wanted to come and look at the motorhome. And so we were walking towards the motorhome. Now, I mentioned the way that the church was sitting and our motorhome. So the church is off, coming up from the arroyo. It would be off to the right, and our motorhome was off to the left, a distance away from each other. The reason I mentioned that is because as we were walking towards the motorhome, I was just looking down. I don't know why, just looking down. My mom has gravel on her property, and I noticed this print in the gravel, which is really odd because how do you make a print in the gravel? A heavy man could be walking in the gravel, and if you're not like forcibly moving the gravel. How do you make a print? Does it make sense? So anyways, it was like the gravel was pushed, like it on purpose wanted to make a print. And the way that this print was, it was very narrow and long. And where like the toes should be, there was like 3, I don't know if you want to call them toes. I don't know what they were, but it would have like 3 toes. And it was about maybe like a size 5 women's shoe, about that long. And I'm saying that because it was almost the size of my tennis shoe, like the length of it. So anyhow, I remember seeing it and I said to my sister, I said, look at that. What is that? And she looks and she goes, I don't know. She goes, that's strange. What is that? And we're just looking at each other and I'm like, and she goes, I said, and there's only one. We were looking at it going, why is there only one? So we start looking around and she goes, Lisa, she said, here's another one. And the span from that footprint to the other one was at least 5 feet. I mean, I couldn't even get my legs, even at a run, to go that far apart. But there was 2 prints and it was coming from the direction of the church. So I know it went in front of there. I didn't even look thick for other prints. I just saw those 2 and I was like, wow, okay, that's weird. I could kick myself now because I should have taken pictures, but I didn't really, I don't know. I just in the moment didn't think about it really. So that's what happened there. And, you know, a lot of weird stuff goes on anyways on my mom's property. So it wasn't something that was really, I don't know, out of the ordinary, I guess. When things happen all the time, you kind of just go, oh, okay, another strange thing happened, I guess. But thinking about all these things now and putting them together, I'm thinking, well, gosh, we probably do have Dogman up here. And I mean, from the stories that I've heard, I mean, we do live next to the Rio Grande River. Maybe it is a place that they do like, I don't know. But it just really, really is very mind-boggling, at least. That's what happened.
It is hard to wrap your mind around. I'll give you that. You told us about the mystery creature in the lake that brushed past. You don't think that could have possibly been the Dogman that did that, do you?
I don't know. She said she saw like a fin, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know what part of its body it would have been using to create a fin. I don't know. I mean, I wished I would have paid more attention, but I had never had an experience like this before. And I just don't know. I mean, there's no answering that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You can only do what you can do. You know how it is. Sometimes under duress, you can mistake one body part for something totally different. I wasn't sure if that could have been possible or if she definitively saw a fin. So I thought I'd ask you about that.
Well, she was young. She was probably about 4.5. So she was young. She may not have known what she saw and maybe just thought, because her and my son were very into sharks, white sharks at that time, great white sharks. So it might have just been that it could have been, I don't know. Do dogmen swim? I don't know. Maybe they do. And I don't know, Vic. That's a really difficult one.
They do swim. Unfortunately, they do. Do you know if any Native American burial grounds were close to where you camped?
Yes, the Cochiti Pueblo does have their own burial grounds. They do. Yeah, they do. I mean, why?
Well, the reason why I asked is when people have dogman encounters, a common thread is a Native American burial ground that's close by. That's not to say that if you're close to a Native American burial ground, you're guaranteed to have an encounter, not by a long shot, but there does appear to be a connection between the two, just like a lot of encounters are reported close to cemeteries. So that's why I was asking about that.
That makes sense. Well, my mom's property, Vic, is extremely haunted, to say the least. There's always something going on there. My sister did some research and she came up with that there was an old hacienda that used to actually owned that whole area at one time. And a lot of things went on there, I guess. Wild West, whatever. But they do hear like chains being drugged. I've heard it. I thought it was the neighbor pulling his trash can all hours of the night, but it wasn't. Apparitions, shadows, shadow people, which I know of now because of everything we've been through. I mean, I don't know, maybe skinwalkers for all we know. Do you think that that's what they are?
I don't. No, I don't think dogmen are skinwalkers or vice versa. You told us about the doll, but please describe the dogman you saw that night for us as accurately as you can from top to bottom.
Wow. Okay. Let's see how I can do this. So when it looked at me through the, it was a full moon. I remember I did see the eyes. I may have glanced at the eyes. I did not stay looking at them because it was talking to me and I was like, it happened so quickly. It was like, oh no, you're not, when it told me it was going to get my children. And I want to say that the eyes were kind of a yellow color, not amber, but yellow, like I don't know how to even describe it. Geez. You remember back in the day, those yellow light bulbs that they used to have that they made and they were like yellow, kind of like that color of a yellow, I guess. The only time I really remember seeing it is when I turned that corner to go down that area of the road by the field when my husband yelled at me and I turned around. It was black because I remember when it dropped on all fours. I saw it drop on all fours and it went out into the field. So I remember it being black. And I remember it was chasing me on 2 feet because it was still standing when my husband yelled at me. And then it dropped on all fours and just took off into the field. Yeah, like a dog would.
Wow, yeah, that's a night you're never going to forget. How tall would you say it was to be able to look down on you the way it did through the top of your tent?
Well, yeah, I think it had to at least be 7 feet tall because my husband, let's see, he couldn't even like bend over the whole tent and really look in the way that it was looking at me. It was like over the tent, like looking directly in the middle at me. So I was sleeping in the middle. So I'm going to guess at least 7 feet tall, at least. If not even a little taller, I don't know. I would have had to measure the tent to see. And how in the world did it bend its body over like that to look at me? I mean, do these things contort themselves or what? You know, it's just kind of weird.
Well, I think more than likely it was quite a bit taller than 7 feet. To do that on a tent so big, it must have been, in my opinion, at least 8. Maybe even taller than 8. I wasn't there to see it, so I'm just guessing, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's how big he was. How much do you think it weighed?
Oh my gosh. I'm not good at weight. I'm better at height than I am weight. Probably at least a good, I mean, as tall as it was, probably at least a good 350 pounds, maybe? I'm guessing.
I wouldn't be surprised. You wouldn't describe its build as being muscular, though. I think you said it was somewhat slim, didn't you?
It was. It was slim. It wasn't very muscular that I remember. Of course, I didn't really stay staring at it, but I don't remember it being very broad at all. It was slender and just tall.
Well, not all of them are muscular, so yeah, that's not that big of a surprise. When you looked up and saw it, did you smell anything strange?
That, I can't say that I did. I did not smell anything.
Well, eyewitnesses don't always smell the scent, so that also comes as no surprise.
I do have a very bad nose, though.
That's all right. You can only do what you can do. Was it telling you that it was going to get your kids worse than seeing it in the first place?
Yes, because I think being mom, you know, mama bear just kind of kicks in and you're like, yeah, I don't care who you are, what you look like. No, you're not. I mean, a mom is going to try to do whatever she's got to do to protect her children. And I think that's what really happened was I was just I didn't even stop to give it a thought that, you know what, this thing could just get us all right now in this tent if it really wanted to. It wasn't even a thought. It just was like, no, you're not. And I'm going to divert your attention away from them. You get me, but you're not touching them. And looking back in hindsight, that was really not a good thing to do. I don't know what would have been the right thing to do, really, because like I said, it could have gotten us anyways in the tent. But taking off like that was really not smart because it could have attacked my family and not went after me. But then again, like I talked to you before, and if this thing had wanted to get me, it would have. So I do agree. I mean, because who's going to outrun? I can't outrun a dog, much less a dog man. You know, that's just silliness. So I don't even know what to think about that. That was just something I don't know.
I can only imagine how mad that made you when you heard it say that it was going to get your kids. That's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a threat, though I'm not sure that it meant anything by it. I think it just, like you said, probably just wanted to scare me. Well, I mean, it kind of did accomplish that, but not so much, maybe, because, like I said, I know this sounds odd, but I thought this was a dream. I really did. Like, I did not believe this was happening. I don't know if that even makes sense.
It does make sense. You had an extraordinary experience, and you just threw you out of sorts, and you're dealing with this the best way you knew how. So, of course, yeah, it definitely makes sense. Did you know that quite a few Dogman eyewitnesses have actually reported the same kind of telepathic communication that you just told us about that you experienced?
Well, you know what? I did hear you had an episode, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which episode it was, and I felt so sorry for the lady. She was the one who stayed over at her father's property with her dog. Her dog was big. And this dog man came, and her father had like glass windows, like big windows. And it was like scraping its nails along the windows and talking to her, communicating with her through her head. And I do remember hearing that. And this is what that did. So putting all these things together and saying, you know what, I'm not crazy. This has happened to other people. This is similar to what I saw. May not have been muscular or, you know, red eyes or anything, but it was definitely tangible and real.
You're definitely not crazy. No, what you say happened, it happened. That's all there is to it. When you unzipped the tent door and ran, how close did it get to you at its closest point?
And you know what? This is funny because I realized this, that getting out of the tent, this is why I think it was just so silly of me. I had to pass like right by it. So, I mean, he could have just reached out and grabbed me, but it didn't. It let me run. And, you know, or maybe I just caught it by surprise and it wasn't expecting me to do that. I don't know. But it didn't get all that close. I mean, close enough, yes, for comfort's sake. But looking back, when my husband yelled at me and I turned around and it turned around and looked at him and I looked at it and at him, it was probably maybe about 10 feet away from me.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Don't think for a second that it was just dumb luck that you got past that dog, man. If it wanted to grab you at any point, it could have and would have done that. But for the reasons that we talked about in the first phone conversation that we had, that's why that didn't happen. So, yeah, please don't lose sight of that.
Right.
Did you ever ask that family who was camping next to you if they heard anything?
You know, that next morning we did ask them if they heard the drumming and the chanting. I didn't tell them anything about my dream. I don't know. I thought it was a dream. I say dream still because that's what I thought it was during that time. But I didn't mention anything about that to them. We asked them if they heard the drumming and the chanting. They said they didn't hear anything at all, which I found odd. Either they were heavy sleepers or I don't know.
Yeah, I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but that too is pretty common amongst eyewitnesses. They'll have this experience and other people will be in the house or be close by, but yeah, they didn't hear it, unfortunately. So, yeah, like I said, That's not just you. From what I understand, you did want to tell your 5-year-old about that experience. What made you decide to do so eventually?
Well, you know what? Our 5-year-old is really super smart. And she overheard us talking, and she wanted to know what we were talking about. And I told her, I didn't want to tell her. And she said, I need to know. So we ended up sharing with her, not the full detail, but, about what I saw. And just that there are things out there and we have to be careful. And so she, I don't think it really has disturbed her mind too much. To be honest, Vic, our family has been going through some really crazy stuff for a while now. And my kids are really just aware and understand spiritual realms and other realms now that we now know about. A lot of really weird stuff started happening to us after this Dogman encounter. Now that I'm talking to you, this is pretty much, I think, when it all started happening.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That, too, is a pretty common phenomenon. You have a Dogman encounter, and it just blows the cap right off, and all these other strange experiences happen. I can't explain that, but, yeah, that's a pretty common occurrence. When your husband told you that he had forgotten about you telling him about that experience, were you more frustrated or surprised?
I was frustrated because I had already told him 3 times. And every time I had told him, and the last time that I told him, I said, you are not going to forget this. You have to remember this, because I don't know why you're not, it's not sticking to his brain for some reason. I'm like, why? I keep telling you this over and over and over, and you don't remember. And until recently, this last time that I told him, which was, I don't know, about 2 or 3 months ago, maybe, he finally remembers. And he's just like, you know what? He said, I don't even remember the first time you told me. Even when we were in the tent that morning when we woke up and I told them, he didn't remember. He remembered nothing about it. My daughter did, but not my husband. So, and he's the one that went after me out of the tent yelling at me, what are you doing? And I'm not sure if maybe he was sleepwalking. I don't know, Vic. It's just really weird that he didn't remember that he did that. Well, he did it. He's probably the reason why maybe I'm still here, really. If I think about it, I don't know.
No, you're still here because the Dogman didn't want to hurt you. It didn't want to grab you, eat you, you name it. And I'll bet that conversation with your husband didn't go too well. I'm sure you're pretty upset about him forgetting about that.
I was really irritated with him about that. And that disturbed me because it made me think, what are these things capable of wiping memories then? I mean, my mind was going all over the place. It was going 100 miles an hour because I didn't know what these things were capable of.
Oh, I'm sure it was. You're just trying to make sense out of all of it. So, yeah,
yes.
That's understandable. You told us about the strange print you found in the gravel that it apparently left. Would you mind drawing a sketch of that print so I could post it on the YouTube version of tonight's show?
Yes, I could. I could definitely do that. I do remember what it looked like. It was in the gravel, which is really weird, Vic, because, like I said, even a heavy man, I have heavy people in my family, and even them walking on the gravel, they're not going to do that. So this thing, why? I don't know how it even did that, because you'd have to literally move the gravel and kind of just, sink your foot in there and cause there to be a print. Unless, it was pretty heavy and it was running or something. I don't know.
Well, it's hard to understand how it could have done that, but could have been a combination of its weight, the way it was running, the way it was moving, the way the gravel was. Yeah, it's hard to say how it did it, but all that matters is it did.
Yeah. And I will draw that for you and send it to you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll post it then. How sure are you or aren't you that it was a Dogman that actually went past that window that night?
Well, I can't say that I saw it because the shade was closed. I saw its shadow. I didn't get a very clear view of the shadow. The only reason that I think that it was is because of the print that it left. Because, okay, when you see a dog, you know how their back, okay, they stand up, when they walk on their paws, but then they have that, long part of the back of their, foot. Kind of it's long, and it kind of, like a bone, kind of, do you know what I'm talking about?
That's the hawk. Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, that's what it looked like. It looked like it was that whole hawk area then with its paws. Does that make sense? That's what it looked like. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to look this up. And I did get online, and I was just madly looking to see if I could find anything that resembled that. And I did have to type in Dogman prints, and I did come across one that did look similar. And I don't remember, I think it may have had only 2 of the toe prints, but this one had 3. So I'm not a very good artist, but I will definitely try to draw my best.
Well, I'm not either. If you do the best you can, then yeah, that'll be great. I appreciate it. How concerned are you about having another encounter someday?
You know, I don't know if I ever will. If I do, I don't really want to show fear. All throughout my life, I've dealt with like demonic forces. I've dealt with really weird stuff. I've seen all kinds of weird things happen. And so to see one, I mean, I'm going to say I respect whatever it is, because we have to respect everything and understand that, yeah, though it's different, we don't understand it, we don't know it, but we also need to have, hopefully that it'll have a mutual kind of respect for humanity. I don't know, but I don't want to portray myself as fearful or non-fearful either, because I don't know that I would look it in the face, because I don't know if that would be the right thing to do. But I don't know if I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know if I'll ever see one again. I hope I don't. But if I ever did, I would hope that I would be able to compose myself, you know?
Well, you're just going to do the best you can if you do have another encounter. And if you do have another encounter, looking one in the face would definitely not be the right thing to do. I hope you don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, just like with any other wildlife, right? You really don't want to look at it in the eyes.
That's right. Yeah, not a predator. But having said that, it's about time for us to get out of here. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Just to make sure that when people go out with your families, you pray, hedge of protection around you, watch your children, watch your backs, be aware of your surroundings. And if you see something like that, you're not crazy. It happens.
You're right. If you have an encounter, you're not crazy, and it does happen. Unfortunately, it does happen. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing the details of those experiences with us, Lisa. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. Thanks again so much. Have a great night.